Hey guys, Bonnie here. Thanks for sending in your rejected stock photo. We're going to look through a whole bunch of rejected stock photos that you guys submitted and take a look and see if we can tell why they were rejected based on the reasons you gave me and based on what we're looking at in Lightroom. So I use Lightroom for pretty much everything, so I'm going to use Lightroom for this, and I'm going to show you a couple of tricks along the way as well. And then I'm going to tell you what I think is the most important thing you can do before you try to submit your images. While these images are all great and some of them are just fantastic, I can tell that some of them were definitely rejected for legitimate reasons. And the only way you're going to be able to tell if a photo is going to be rejected for a technical reason that's legitimate is by zooming in and looking at your photo at 100%. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So when we look at this image, if I press the I key in Lightroom, it gives me information. And down here at this information display at the bottom, you can see the pixel width by the pixel height. So that is how many pixels wide this photo is by how many pixels high. So I'm going to hit I again. So this photo is 3,000 pixels wide, and my screen right now that we're looking at, my computer screen, is 1,300 pixels wide. So clearly what we're looking at right now is much smaller than the full size of this image, which is 3,000 pixels wide. So to see this image at full size, to blow it up to 100%, in Lightroom, all you have to do is just click once. When you click once, it zooms you into 100%, and you can drag it around. Over here on the left in the navigator, it shows you where in your photo you're looking, and you can just click and drag, and that is going to allow you to check really up close in your photos and make sure that you don't have any noise or compression or sensor spots, and to make sure that everything is in proper focus. So this image looks pretty good. I believe that the rejection reason for this one was the sky. And I can see that what you did here, I'm going to put this in the develop module, I can see that the sky was pretty bright, and it looks like there's a really heavy gradient that was added in processing. So you want to keep your processing really light and natural so that your images look like they would have looked to the naked eye. But this gradient is really intense, so I'm just going to go in and tone it down a bit. If you have a gradient on there, I would say scale back big time on your gradient. I'm just going to pretend that that's what we're doing here. So I would scale back on that a lot, and then instead of adding a gradient, crop out some of the sky. I'm just going to decide which cows here to crop out also. Take that one out maybe. And that actually, when we do that, it puts your main cow right here on the intersection of two rule of thirds lines, which is a really powerful place in composition. So I think that's actually much better like this. And I would do that and then try to resubmit it and see if you can get it in to an agency that way. So with this photo, I believe the rejection reason was light, and I can see that there's pretty harsh light. It looks like this photo was taken around 10 o'clock in the morning, and there's direct sunlight on the bird, but it's not that harsh. Nothing is overexposed and blown out, and nothing is so underexposed that it's totally black. So we haven't lost any detail. I actually think that the light is fine. You know that this is a seabird, and this photo is probably taken somewhere near water at sea. It's pretty natural condition for the light to look like this. So it's funny that that's what they chose as their rejection reason. Looking at it at 100%, I can see that it's a little tiny bit blurry. So I'd want to try to downsize the image a little bit before exporting, and I'll show you how to do that. But this one's already, it's 2,400 pixels wide by 1,600 tall, and that is going to be, it's already pretty small. If you wanted to submit this to iStock, you can downsize it as far as 1,600 pixels wide. So let's go ahead and go File, export. So what I mean by downsize is I'm exporting the photo at a smaller size than its original dimensions or its cropped dimensions. So I'm going to come down here to the resize to fit box and make sure that's checked. And then I'm going to go to the long edge and I'm going to type in 1600 pixels, leave the resolution at 300 and hit export. So that is going to make our photo a little bit smaller than it is here. So when we look at it in the computer, here we go, look at it at 100%. Now it's smaller, but the focus is a lot sharper. And this takes care of all kinds of issues. It can take care of slightly soft focus, it can take care of some noise and some compression issues, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. And well, I just showed you how to do that, but I'll show you how to do that again when we come to some other images. So this is going to be too small for Shutterstock, but it's not going to be too small for iStock, and I would try just downsizing it a little bit and resubmitting it. Alright, in the case of this image, it was rejected. There was no reason left for me, so I can see that if you look at the histogram up here on the right, this little arrow is anything that's overexposed, and this arrow is anything that's underexposed. So when I hover over that, you can see that a lot of the image turns blue, and when that happens, it means that all of those areas are black with no detail. So I think this photo has just a little bit too much contrast in it. The dark areas are extremely dark and the bright areas are extremely bright. And it looks like it's 1080 by 947 is going to be too small for a lot of agencies. So you definitely need, it looks like you probably cropped the image, which is great because you're focusing on just the important part, which is these gorgeous tulips. But it's going to be probably too small to get into an agency at that size, and the contrast is just really intense. This is the kind of thing where you want to try to get there really early in the morning or late afternoon and take a photo when the light isn't quite as harsh. So this one isn't going to make it into an agency, but see if you have some others from that day where the light isn't quite as contrasty, or maybe ones that are bigger, that aren't cropped down to such a small size. So again, for iStock, you're going to have to be at least 1200 by 1600 pixels. And for other agencies, you're going to have to be bigger. Shutterstock goes by megapixels, so your photo is going to have to be at least 4 megapixels, which is much bigger than this size also. So just take a look from that day when you were shooting and see if you have something else that's a little bigger or something that was taken in an area without as much contrast in the light. Okay, this is a spectacular image. There is no denying that. Look at this. The bear's toes have just left the ice, and all the water is so calm. This is just amazingly gorgeous. But I can tell when I click once to zoom in and look at it at 100%, I can tell that there's a lot of compression in this image. So this looks like sort of a sandy texture. When you look at it at 100% and you start dragging it around, you start to see this texture. So this water should be smooth. You should see no texture in it at all. It should just look like smooth water. But we see this strange sandy looking texture, and that's compression. You can see it on the polar bear's face too, and by his paws and all of that. So that's why this image got rejected, because it has a lot of compression in it. Either this was heavily processed, or I'm guessing it was probably taken with a point and shoot camera or with a camera that was set on a low image quality setting. So always make sure that you check your quality settings on your camera and make sure that they're set to the highest image quality possible and the highest resolution possible. Stock agencies want the biggest, best quality files you can possibly give them. So despite the fact that this is just a knockout image, It's not going to make it into an agency because of the compression in the background, well, compression all over the image actually. However, I would try printing this. I'd print it on canvas or something like that, and I'm sure you probably have a lot of other great images from this trip that maybe you could put together into a series and sell as fine art at, say, a coffee shop or something. You may end up making more from that kind of image sale anyway. So check your image quality settings in your camera and make sure that they are set at the highest possible quality. All right, I can see, let's see, this one was rejected for artifacting and fringing. So when we zoom into 100% by clicking once, we can see that there is a strange, like around the edge of the trees. It's probably going to be hard for you to see on this video, but I want you to be able to do this on your own computer. So when I zoom in, I can see around the edge of the trees sort of something that looks kind of crunchy. It looks like a texture, a strange texture that doesn't belong there. The sky does not actually look like that. The trees don't actually look like that around the edges. It's definitely something you're going to need to have good vision or be wearing your glasses to be able to see, because it's not, you know, it's something you kind of have to get used to looking for and seeing. So I definitely see that around the edges. And the fringing that they're talking about is just a slight blue tint to the edge of things here. There's kind of a blue and teal tint along where the bright areas and the dark areas meet. So that might be the reason why it was rejected. It also has a lot of really bright areas. It's another really contrasty day. So stuff like this, you just want to try to get there and photograph it either early morning or late afternoon when the light isn't going to be quite as harsh. And then you won't get this, this white sky. You'll probably get more of a blue sky, and that'll help you out a lot. There's also something down here in the corner that's distracting, so I would definitely want to crop that out. I can't tell what that is, and it does distract the viewer from the overall image. So that's something I would definitely crop out. You can try with this one, just like I was talking about with the other ones, to downsize it. It's already kind of small. Let's see. It's already kind of small. It's not full size. Like maybe this was cropped or downsized a little bit already before I got it. So let's go to export. And we're going to go down to image sizing, resize to fit, 1600 pixels on the long edge. So we'll go into iStock. And let's take a look and see. I'm going to hit this button, will help us view it at 100% in our computer. So that does take care of some of the issues, some of the compression issues. But there's still kind of, see this strange teal color up here? There's still kind of some fringing along the edges of where bright and dark areas meet in the photo. So you could try downsizing it and resubmitting it and see if that works. It may still get rejected for the fringing issue. And when it comes to compression, the reason why you're going to have compression in your images, which is, you know, one of your rejection reasons, is, again, when you're shooting either with a point-and-shoot camera or a camera that's set to a lower image quality setting, or maybe you processed it a lot. I don't think that you processed this a lot. I'm guessing that you might have processed it a little, but that's probably fine. But do check the image quality settings in your camera and make sure you're shooting at the highest image quality and the highest image resolution. Alright, so this photo was rejected for lighting, and that's actually a pretty simple fix. So I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to fix this one and resubmit it. I also see there's a little person coming in the edge, so I definitely want to crop that out because that's a distraction. We want our stock images to always be as clean and clutter-free as possible. So you can see immediately how much that already cleans up this image. If I look at the histogram, I can see there's just, when I hover over this left arrow, you can see there's some blue that pops up on the image. So those are areas that are black with no detail. So I'm going to just pull the overall exposure up quite a bit here. Almost to +1, or around +1. And I'm probably going to bring some shadows up also, just to add some more light to those shadow areas. I might pull the highlights down a little bit just to make sure I didn't introduce anything that's too bright. Might pull the contrast up a little bit just to add some pop to the image. So let's look at how we're doing so far. Here's our before, and there's our after. Before and after. Much brighter, a lot more pop to the colors. But it did kind of wash out the sky. So what I'm going to do is come down to my HSL section, and under luminance I'm going to pull the blue down to make it a little darker, and under saturation I'm going to pull it up to saturated a little bit. There we go. So now our sky pops out a little bit more, and it's a little bit more blue. And we do have a funny, looks like another plane in the background there, so that's okay. I might take that out with the spot removal tool. Just real quick removal. And let's look at our before and after here. So our before image is kind of dark, and our after image is just brighter and pops out more. So I would definitely add more exposure to the image, and a little bit of, you could even maybe add a little bit of saturation. But just like every other image, you always want to look at your images at 100%. So I'm clicking once to zoom in, and I can see that there's quite a bit of noise in the image. So that is this sandy looking texture. All of this area, again, this is probably going to be hard to see on the video, but when you look at your own images, you want to look for something that looks like a texture where things should be smooth. So the sky should be smooth and the plane should be smooth, but I see this sandy texture over everything. And I'm going to come down to the detail tab, and I'm going to pull the noise reduction slider up quite a bit, maybe to 30 or so. And that got rid of a lot of it, and now what we're going to do is we're going to export it a slightly smaller size, just like we were talking about. Let's see, I'm going to go to megapixels, and let's put this at 4.1 and export. And wait for Lightroom. Unless it already did it. So this is our exported image at a smaller size, and when I view it at 100% in my computer, I can see that the noise is virtually gone now. So just using the noise reduction tool in Lightroom and then exporting the image at a smaller size really takes care of that noise issue. You don't have to worry about that at all now, and I would definitely try resubmitting this image. The only thing I can think of now that might get this rejected is the words and letters on the plane itself. That might be a copyright issue, but if the plane is old enough, it might not be also. So you can always try and see if you can get it in, and if it can't get in under regular stock, you can try submitting it as editorial. Alright, wow, this is a cool image. Love the color, love the dramatic light and the two kites in the sky. When I click once and zoom in to 100%, which you definitely have to do on every image you submit to stock, I can see a texture coming in here, and it looks like, well, the rejection reason given was lighting. Maybe because you can see part of the subject, but you can't see any of the rest of the subject of the photo down here, which is the kites are first, but they may actually be cut off. It's hard to tell because that area is so dark. So this is clearly very dramatic light, and that's a good thing. But there are areas that are completely blown out. So it looks like we can just come to the basic tab and pull the highlights down a bit, and that will help with those blown out areas. There's nothing that's black with no detail, so that's good. And then when you zoom into 100%, you see this noise issue coming in. So I would do the exact same thing as I did with the last image. I would just come down to effects, or detail, sorry, come down to detail and pull the noise reduction up. And you can see that a lot of the noise disappears, and then I would export at a smaller size. So when you go to File, Export, come down to File Settings, come down to Image Sizing, click the Resize to Fit. I'm going to export it at 4.1 megapixels, and we'll take a look in the computer once it's finished exporting here. And click this button to view it at 100%, and the noise is virtually gone. So I would try that. I would just reduce the noise a little bit, reduce the size of the image, pull some of those highlights back in, and try resubmitting it. No guarantees that it'll get in the second time, but you could definitely try again. Alright, so this image, when I hover over this arrow, I can see a lot of little red areas appear, which are overexposed areas. When I hover over this area, I see some blue areas appear, which are underexposed areas. But this image is huge. It's 6,000 pixels wide by 3,000 high. So we could probably do some processing to fix those issues and then downsize the image. When I zoom into 100%, so I clicked once to zoom in, I can see a lot of compression issues, and maybe this image was also made to be larger than the original in the computer. And if you stretch out an image and make it bigger than the original, you're going to start introducing a lot of issues. So when you look at these seagulls, it just looks like they don't look real. They look kind of modeled, and there's a lot of, they don't look sharp and in focus. They have some compression or some upsizing image issues in them. So you definitely, for every single image, I'm going to keep saying this, for every single image you submit, you have to look at it at 100%, and you have to drag the image around. You have to look at the entire thing at 100% and make sure that it looks just immaculate. And in this case, I can see this compression issue on your main subject, which is the birds. So it's going to get rejected for that, and maybe if we downsize it back down to a smaller size, we can get rid of some of that. But the underexposed areas are so underexposed, I'm not sure how far we would have to go to try to fix those. So even if I bring up the shadows and the blacks, and I bring down the highlights and the water, yeah, that fixes it a little, but there's still some areas that are black with no detail down there. So that may or may not be an issue to a stock agency. It depends on the agency and it depends on the inspector. But I would just try to bring the shadows up a bit and bring the highlights down to try to fix those issues, and then export it at a smaller size and see if you can get rid of some of the compression in the photo. Alright, so this image was rejected for composition and focus issues. So let's see if we click and zoom in to 100%. Okay, something weird is going on with this image. When I zoom in to 100%, it loads, it looks really, really incredibly blurry. And I'm wondering if maybe this image was made to be bigger than the original, and that's why it looks so blurry at 100%. If you zoom into 100% and you see that something looks this blurry, then you definitely have an issue somewhere along the line. And you know, buyers, if they want an image and they want to use it really large, they definitely want it to be as tack sharp as possible. And nothing in the image is really sharp, and I don't think that that the original looks like this. I think the original's probably sharp. I can tell that there's something weird going on here. So it's not your fault or your camera's fault, but maybe if you made the image bigger than it was originally, it became extremely blurry. So I'm not sure exactly what happened, but try to go back to your very original image and use that image and process that and export that. As it is right now, I can't really work with this image because it's incredibly blurry. It could also be that maybe there was an issue just when you sent the image to me. Maybe your email program reduced the size of the image and the file size, I mean, and also reduce the quality of the image just for email or something. So check and make sure that your processing program isn't reducing the quality of your image or something, because there's a lot of you can't submit an image this way. Again, maybe yours doesn't look this blurry and it's just the version that I have for some reason. But definitely get your original image, put it in a processing program, and look at it at 100% and make sure that everything is in tack sharp focus. And if it's slightly out of focus, then you just want to do the same thing I've been doing with all these images, and that's just export it at a slightly smaller size. Try 4 or 5 megapixels, and then take a look again in your computer and make sure that it's come back into focus. All right, this is a great concept. I love that this, young people walking down a road. It looks like they're traveling. It's a really cool image. When I zoom into 100%, I can see some compression in these areas, and it just looks like, again, a strange texture that doesn't belong there. And there's kind of a sort of a glowy outline around all of their bodies. So this is a large image, 5,000 pixels wide by 3,000 tall, and you can definitely downsize it. So let's file, export. We'll go down to resize to fit, and I'm going to give it 5 megapixels because it's already a really big image, so we can probably make it a little bit bigger when we export. Well, we're making it smaller, but we're going to make a larger version than last time we did this. And when I look at it in the computer at 100%, it looks much better. The background up here is much smoother. I don't see nearly as many issues. I don't see the outlines around their bodies as much. Definitely try to do that. I also noticed when I was looking at it here in Lightroom, it got rejected for focus issues. So when I zoomed into 100%, I can tell that the focus on these people is a little soft, especially because when I drag around the image, it looks like the rocks and dirt on the road right here are more in focus than they are up here where your subject is. So your focus, it looks like it was more in this area right here of the photo. So it's slightly the wrong place. But when you downsize it to a smaller size, you can't tell. Everything that needs to be in focus comes into focus. So I would definitely just downsize it and try resubmitting it because it's a very strong image. Great shot. Love the soft focus in the background. When I zoom in, it looks like it's just slightly soft, out of focus a little bit, and there's a little bit of a fringe, which is sort of this bright blue outline along the side of this bird's head. So, and then a little bit down here along the neck too. So just like we've been doing with all the other images, I would just downsize it a little bit and see if we can fix the issue. Export. We're going to export it at 5 megapixels again. And in the computer, I'm going to take a look. And when I look at it at 100%, it's now in much better focus. And this looks really nice and sharp now. So I would just try downsizing it a little bit and resubmitting it. So this image was also rejected for focus issues. And if we zoom in to 100%, let it load, we can tell that, you know, part of this tomato right here is in focus, but the stem is a little bit soft. So I think they just wanted a little bit more of the tomato to be in focus. So you could do the exact same thing we've been doing, just downsize it at a slightly, export it at a slightly smaller size and see if that brings everything into sharper focus and resubmit it. This was rejected for focus also, but when I look at it at 100%, I can tell that this cat is in sharp focus. So that's great. I don't see any focus issues here. Sometimes they want a little more of your subject to be in focus, so maybe that's what they're saying. They want you to have a slightly deeper depth of field, but I don't think that would actually help this image. Sometimes when a stock agency has a lot of a subject, so they will have probably a lot of cats, they will come up with rejection reasons because they just don't think that this is the most outstanding cat image that they've seen. But I think it's a great image, and I think I would actually probably just crop it a little bit on the one side to bring more attention to the cat, because we don't need all that extra over there. And yeah, the exposure looks good, the focus looks good. I might try titling it something to maybe set it apart from other cats. So try giving a title like Barn Cat, maybe, because the cat looks like it's sitting on hay or grass. And that would sort of set it apart from other cats. Just calling it a barn cat. I don't know that this is actually a barn cat, but try doing that and resubmitting it and see what happens. So this photo, when I zoom in to 100%, I can see that our main subject is not in focus. So that's going to get you rejected. There are parts of the photo that are in focus, but, well, I can't, let's see. Yeah, it's harder to see. I don't see a lot of focus. So definitely make sure when you're taking your photos, you can zoom in on the back of your camera after you've taken a photo and make sure that the photo's in focus. You also have this really bright white thing up here in the corner. So I would just try to get into a different position so that when you take the photo, you're either closer up on the flower or you're off to the right, shooting more towards the left, so it gets rid of this bright white thing in the background. That's definitely going to be a distraction. And then, yeah, just check your focus, and if it's out of focus when you're shooting, then you'll have time to really quickly reshoot. But this photo is going to be rejected for that reason. So just double check your focus while you're shooting and make sure that your main subject is the thing that's in focus. This is a beautiful photo and nice composition. I love the soft focus in the background. Really, really nice. And the contrast of colors is great also. It does, however, look like it was processed quite a bit because we've got these dark lines between the red and the green. And red is a hard color sometimes in photographs. It sometimes doesn't come out looking just right. When you zoom in here, you can see that they call it posterization. Sorry, there's a truck going by outside. Posterization means that the different colors, so all of this part of this petal has become one solid red color with a little bit of another color in it. And the actual petal itself, if you were to look at it with your naked eye, would not look like one solid piece of paper. It would look like a petal. So in this case, it's going to be hard to get this accepted because of that posterization. And that happens a lot with red, with the color red. For some reason, our cameras have a hard time with it. I can see good focus right inside here in this petal, but I'm not sure if that's where you want the focus to be. You might want a slightly deeper depth of field. The focus is here too, so that's good. But even if you downsize this photo and export it at a smaller size, you can try that. Export it at a smaller size and resubmit it and see if that helps. But it's going to be tough because of this posterization issue, and that's usually a camera issue rather than your fault. So see if you have some other photos of this flower without this really solid block of red look on the petals. Another thing is if you shoot this at a different time of day with less intense light, you're also going to get a subtler effect, and the red color is going to come out much better than it will with really, really bright light directly on it. So either you could try shooting at a different time of day, or when you're out photographing stuff like this, you can hold up a screen above the flowers to sort of block a little bit of the light and soften the light a little bit, so you don't have such a bright, intense red. So this photo was rejected for focus and model release. If you're going to submit a photo to commercial stock agencies, you definitely need a model release. This person is definitely recognizable. If he saw this photo of himself, he would be able to recognize himself, and his friends would probably be able to recognize him as well. So you do need a model release, and you might need a model release for this person as well. Another thing is that up here you've got copyrighted words. So these, if it's got names and company names, those things are all copyrighted, and you can't get those into an agency for commercial use. So you can use them for editorial use, but not commercial use. So definitely watch out for stuff like that. If you're able to shoot with a shallower depth of field and just focus on your main subject and blur out everything else, that can help. But in this case, I also see a lot of compression. So it looks like you were probably shooting with a point-and-shoot camera, or with a camera where the quality setting was set on a low quality setting. You know, some cameras come out of the box at a low quality setting just because it lets you put more photos on the memory card. Because the photos that come out of it, when they're lower quality, they're a smaller file size, so you can fit a whole lot more on a memory card than you can if you're shooting highest quality possible. But it's going to be a waste, because when your photos come out at a low quality, you're going to have a lot of compression issues in the photo. And I just see a texture. It's a funny looking texture around the edges mostly of our main subject and on his skin. And you can see if you look closely, maybe not on the video, but if this is your photo, you can see if you look closely around his ear looks kind of jagged, not like a human ear, more like a low quality photo setting ear. So just make sure that your camera is set on the highest quality possible, and watch out for trademarks and things like that. Oh, this guy down here, he's definitely recognizable and would also need a model release. So anyone in your photo who's recognizable needs a model release to be able to sell it as commercial stock. And the same thing goes with any of these trademarks. The hotel here, you can read Hotel Bower, you can see what hotel it is, you can see the company here. So just you want to avoid anything that's copyrighted or trademarked. This is a lovely, lovely springtime image. When I click to view it at 100%, I can see that this area here, which is kind of our main subject area, this is the area I'd want to have in focus the most, is a little bit blurry. And if I come down over here, I can see that my focus went to this side flower over here. So the focus is really sharp right here, but a bit blurry here. So It looks like they got you for exposure and noise as well. So the exposure, if you come over to the histogram and hover over that arrow, you can see that everything that turns bright red is overexposed, so completely white with no detail. So you want to bring your highlights down in Lightroom, and I'm just going to bring them way down until that arrow goes away. So now nothing is completely overexposed anymore. So that helps take care of our exposure issue. The noise issue, yeah, there's quite a bit of, it's actually compression in here. So it looks like a funny texture. Again, it looks like sand or bumpy texture. And I think we could probably downsize this photo and get rid of some of that. We might also be able to come down here to the Detail tab and pull our noise reduction slider up a little bit. So that takes care of a lot of it. Actually, that smooths it out really nicely. We also have some fringing. So see, this looks like a halo around the edges here. Whenever you have something really bright that comes up against something really dark, you gotta watch out around the edges because you might have this fringing issue. But if we go to lens corrections here and we come to the remove chromatic aberration, aberration and fringing are the same thing, just different words. So if we click on that, that gets rid of some of the blue color in there, and if we come to this eyedropper and we click it on that blue, we might be able to get rid of some more of it. So that helps us with the fringing, and that got rid of that, so that's good. You have to check though and make sure you didn't introduce any issues. It may just have created a problem. So we can go backwards in our history here. Yeah, so when I did that it created a problem along some of the other edges. So you may have to play with that a little bit to get it just right and get rid of some of that blue fringing there. Sometimes if you click around a couple of different times, oh, I still have that issue there. Well, let's see what happens if we downsize it. So let's export it at a smaller size. Well, actually, before we do that, it's, okay, we can see it's pretty big already. So let's export it at 4.1 megapixels. All right. And when we look at it in the computer at 100%, the focus is much better. Everything looks like it's much more in focus now, which is great. There's still a little bit of fringing, but you could try to just export it at a smaller size. We'll first take care of the brightness by pulling your highlights down a little bit. So remember, we did that up here with the highlight slider. It pulled those down actually quite a bit to bring some of the detail back to those bright areas, and then export it at a smaller size and see if you can submit it that way. They may still get you for exposure because it's got this bright direct sunlight on it, and again, this is another photo that would be better taken early morning or late afternoon when the sun isn't quite as intense. It looks like this was taken at 2:30 p.m., so it's a pretty bright time of day. So if you can take stuff like this at like 5 p.m., 6 p.m., you're probably going to be better off with the light. But, you know, just try to downsize it and take a look and see if you can resubmit it and see if it'll get in, because it is a lovely image. Alright. So when I view this image at 100%, it looks like maybe you used some noise reduction on it, because it has kind of a soft, smooth feel all over the image. So I think what I would do with this image, just like I've done with all the others, is just downsize it and resubmit it. You just have to export it probably at 4 or 5 megapixels and you should be good. The other thing is there probably are a couple of logos and things on here that you'll have to get rid of. So I would just use my spot removal tool here and paint over those things and get rid of them. Looks like it didn't quite work here. I might have to mess around with it to make it look just right. So in Lightroom, using your spot removal tool, you can come in and make sure you don't have any logos or trademarks or brand names, and you don't want any numbers on the boats either, because then you would need a property release from the owner of the boat. So just go around and look for that stuff and get rid of it if you can. And then this is a lovely image. I definitely think it could work well. So just try to export it at 4 or 5 megapixels. Try 5 megapixels and resubmit it and see if you can get it in. Alright, here is an image that has been heavily processed. You can tell because the sky is deep cobalt blue. And then you can also tell when you look at 100%, you can see there's a strange edge around where the bright areas meet the dark areas. So that suggests to me that you brought the blues down, the exposure in the blues. You probably brought that down to add intensity to the sky, and then maybe brought the saturation up too. It's nice and dramatic looking. It's beautiful looking at this size, but when you look at it at 100%, you get that strange texture all over everything again. So it's pretty big. You could either try downsizing it and resubmitting it, but even when you downsize it, you'll probably have this outline along the edges. So I would just scale back on your processing a little bit. Don't go quite as far with the blue, and maybe downsize it a little bit and resubmit, because it is a lovely image. Alright, so this one is another beautiful image, and I think that if we look at this left arrow here, it's got a little bit of black with no detail in it, but that's not really a big deal because it's in this deep shadow area. I might, let's take a look. It's a little bit soft. Your subject is just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit out of focus. Not a lot, just a tiny bit. So it's big enough. I would just do exactly what we've done to the other ones. Downsize it and resubmit. You might also bring up the shadows a little bit, the shadow areas, just to sort of bring more attention to the animal. And since there's some brightness around the edges, I might also come down to effects and add a little bit of a vignette. But that's just me. I don't think you need to do that. I think all you need to do really is just downsize it and try resubmitting. Because if you just downsize it a tiny bit, if you go down to maybe 5 megapixels and look at it at 100% in your computer, I think it's going to pull this into really sharp, good focus. Alright, so this one was rejected for blur and lens quality, which is a strange rejection because I don't see any blur. This is actually pretty sharp, but it looks like maybe you took it through noise reduction or something, because it's kind of, the edges look really smooth, smoother than I think they actually are in real life. So you do have some space. You could downsize it a bit and see if that takes care of it. There's also some bright white areas here, so I would come up and bring your highlights down as well, just to get rid of those bright white areas. But otherwise, I think I would just downsize this a little bit and try resubmitting, because I think that when you downsize, any of those issues will go away. Alright, so this image is a little bit blurry around the eye, and it's a little bit flat looking. So I might add some contrast to it. I might bring the exposure up a bit, and maybe bring the shadows down. Well, maybe bring the shadows up and the blacks down, just to add some pop to the bird itself. So if we look at the before and after, you can see that I just brightened up this bird and added some more contrast to it. So I would try that, and then since it's a little bit blurry, I want to downsize it so you have some room here. You don't actually have a lot of room. It's not a really large image, so it looks like you probably cropped it a bit. So this may or may not make it in because of the focus issue right here. And the beak, the eye and the beak, this is what's the most important part of your subject if it's a human or an animal, is the eye. And you can tell by looking at the eye and the beak area here that the bird is a little bit, just a tiny bit out of focus. This is the kind of thing that I would downsize if I had the room, but it looks like you don't quite have enough room with the image size, so you may not be able to bring it into focus enough. But it's definitely something that you could give a try. You could try submitting it and see if they let you in with it. You definitely want to add the scientific name of this bird. If you know what kind of bird this is, look up the scientific name and add that in to your keywords and description as well. Okay, this photo is adorable. I believe that you said you got rejected for lighting, and you also said that they told you they had a lot of images of dogs already, which is true, they do, but I think that, you know, this dog wearing a collar is great because I know on iStock in their forums they have somebody who's constantly asking for pets with collars, so that's a good thing. I think it's just a little dark, so I would actually pull the exposure up quite a bit and maybe pull the contrast up quite a bit, and the vignette on it is a little bit heavy. A lot of designers and photo buyers can add their own vignettes, but they can't take yours off if they want a photo without a vignette. So I would just kind of lighten up the vignette a bit, and I would lighten up the photo a bit and add a little bit of contrast. The focus is tack sharp, so great job on that. But yeah, I would just brighten it up a little bit. See, here's our before and after. And then try resubmitting it, because I think that you could definitely get it in. And maybe in the title of the image, call it, you know, yellow lab with collar or dog with collar. Specify that the dog is wearing a collar and tags in the description of the image, just to sort of set it apart from other images of dogs. Alright, I like this photo. So this is, they got you for exposure and composition. This photo is accepted into some agencies but rejected from others, so you know, sometimes that just happens, no big deal. I would probably come in and crop it a little bit because there's this bright distracting area up here in the corner. And I know we lose some of the tree when we do that. But I just want to get rid of that distraction. I might also get rid of that distraction. And it just cleans it up a tiny bit to crop on the edge. I don't think you need to, but I might. And you might bring the white balance up, add a little yellow, just a tiny bit of yellow to it, because it looks a little bit blue. Now, if I hover over this arrow, it's not actually showing us anything, but these bright white areas with snow are really, really bright because the sun is hitting them directly. So I might bring your highlights down just a little bit and your shadows up just a little bit, and that's going to help even out the high contrast that you have. And then maybe try resubmitting it. You have a lot of room here, and it's in focus, so I don't think focus is an issue. So I would just try cropping it a little bit, taking the highlights down and resubmitting it, see if they let it in. And if they don't, oh well, you got it into some agencies but not others, and it's, you know, move on to the next. So this image, the main subject is, it looks like this archway here, and when I zoom in, this image isn't very, very big, the one that I have, so it doesn't zoom in all the way, but I can see pretty well when I look at it that it's not completely in focus. So these shells all have really sharp edges, or these rocks, or whatever they are that are used to build here, all have really sharp edges, but when I zoom in they look kind of soft. Everything around here looks kind of soft and a little bit out of focus. So what I would suggest is what I've been suggesting all along would be to downsize it and try to resubmit it, but you don't have a lot of room here for downsizing. So maybe I would take the crop off, because it's been cropped quite a bit, it looks like. I would take the crop off of it and then downsize it a little bit and see if that takes care of the focus issue. It also looks a little bit blue, so I might add just a tiny bit of yellow to it, and I might bring some of the highlights down, because some of those highlight areas are really bright. So just play with it a little bit more and see what you can do. I would take the crop off and then try to downsize it a bit and see if it takes care of some of those focus issues right there. If you can't take care of the focus issues, then it'll probably get rejected. But that's okay. Just move on to the next image. You know that stock agencies are really picky when it comes to the technicals. Alright, so these are two images. This person sent them in and asked, this image was rejected because it needed a property release, but this image taken in the same place was not rejected, it was accepted. So I think the reason why is because this image, in this image, the main subject is this gate, and it figures very prominently, and it's a very specific gate. If you were to put this in an ad, the person who owns this property would know that this is their property, and it's in an ad representing something else. So they may not want to represent something else in an ad, which is why you would need a property release for whoever it is who owns the property behind this gate. However, in this image, the gate does not figure very prominently, and if this were used in an ad, you know, it's not very noticeable. What's actually most noticeable is the palm trees. So I think that's really why this one got accepted while this image got rejected, just because the property itself, which is apparent by the gate, it figures much more prominently in this image. Alright, this is a really fun capture of this girl. Love the idea. When I look at it at 100%, and it looks like, yeah, your image is pretty big, so that's good. When I look at it at 100%, I can see compression, so it's like this jagged looking edge along her face, and this strange texture on her skin and in her hair and on her shirt and on her arms. You can see it looks sort of, again, sandy or bubbly or rough. Her skin should be smooth and even and not have these inconsistencies in light and color here. So that is, I think, due to either a point and shoot camera or, again, a camera set on a low image quality setting. So always make sure that your camera is set on the highest image quality possible. And if you can, what I would do with this image is, well, first I would probably, it's got some bright areas, so I would just bring the highlights down a little bit and maybe bring the shadows up a little bit. I might also add a vignette to bring some of the attention to her, because there's a lot of clutter and stuff sort of in the background here. And then I would export it at a smaller size and see if that takes care of the compression issues in her face and hair and on her shirt and everywhere throughout. Yeah, just try downsizing it and see if that takes care of the issue before trying to resubmit it. Gorgeous shot. Love the colors. It looks like it's just slightly out of focus or has compression issues. So it might be from processing or it might be from the camera. I don't know which, but there are some compression issues. But you do have some space, so you could downsize this, make this image a little bit smaller, and try resubmitting it. And I would definitely do that because this is a unique and beautiful image. This one I think was probably scanned in. You can see a white edge over here, so maybe it was cropped in the scanning program or in Photoshop. So that's a really easy thing to fix in Lightroom. It's also leaning over a little bit, so I'd probably straighten it out a little bit. And then when I zoom in, I can see a lot of texture in here. So the sky doesn't have texture in it. The sky should be nice and smooth. But in this photo, there's a big texture over the sky, and there's also a bunch of little white specks, which I'm guessing are probably dust on a print that was scanned in. I may or may not be right there, but I see these little specks. So for stock, you're going to have to go in and remove all of those using the spot removal tool, because yes, stock inspectors are going to see all of those and they are going to reject it based on that. So you need to go in and just remove all of these specks, which will take a long time. So before you go in and remove all the specks, you might want to see if you're going to be able to export it at a smaller size and get rid of some of this noise. So I would definitely come down to detail and pull your luminance noise reduction slider up. Get it at 100% here. And that got rid of some of the noise, but there's still quite a bit. So what I would do next is then export it at a smaller size. So let's try maybe 4.1 megapixels. And when you look at it at 100% in the computer, there's still quite a bit of noise. So I think this one is going to be tricky. I don't think this one's going to get in just because of the noise issue that's still there even when we reduce the size of the image. And it's going to be kind of a pain for you too, because you're going to have to go in at 100% and get rid of every little dust speck on the image. And I don't think that it's worth it to go in and try to remove every dust speck, because this image may not bring you enough income from sales to be worth the time that you spent, you know, getting rid of the noise and getting rid of all the dust specks. So I would definitely see if you have something else that is maybe taken with a digital camera and a more recent camera, because you've got all this noise and stuff from the scanning. Or check your scanner settings. Make sure that all the dust is off the print and off the scanner. Check the settings and make sure that you're scanning at the highest quality possible to make sure that you don't get all of this noisy texture up in the sky here. So this is a really fun and interesting image. I've never seen anything quite like it. It's unique, and if you have model releases for these people, then that's amazing. For stock, you definitely can't use any borders, so you'll need to take the border off for stock. That might just be something you're using for yourself, for your own art, and that's fine. But you have to take your name and border off if you want to submit it to a stock agency. And also I would take off the vignette around the edges. See the gray vignette on the edges. It's a nice effect for the photo for art, and if you're going to print it for these guys, but for stock they won't want that. They may also reject it if you, because the shoes say Nike, and for stock, if you want to use an image commercially, you can't have anything, any brand names in the image, so you'll have to get rid of the words Nike if you just want to submit it for stock. For art, this is great, and for directly selling directly to clients, this is great. For stock, they're just really picky about certain things, like having an artistic border and having this heavy vignette. You'll have to take those off, and you'll have to take off the Nike. So I love this image. We saw this in one of our challenges. And suggested that you submit it for stock, and I still think you should. It is, I guess the grass here is a little bit out of focus, so I think all I would do, you have the room, is just downsize it to 4.1 megapixels and resubmit it. See if that brings it into focus. Alright, this is a really fun and nice image. I do want to straighten it out a little bit. It looks like the doorway was leaning to the right. I just want to get in there and straighten it out, and I might brighten it a bit too because it's kind of dark. So I just bring the exposure up and bring the highlights down and play with it a bit until you bring some of the contrast into it. Pull the goodness out, as Shelley would say. I might make it a little warmer. And yeah, maybe add a little more vibrance to it, just to bring some color in. And I would probably also add a bit of a vignette to it. So there's our before and after. See how it's brighter, and you can see the detail better in these dark areas than you can in here. So I would just kind of brighten it up a little bit. I can't see it at full size because I have a really small version, it looks like. So I can't actually look at it at 100%, but do take a look at it at 100% in your computer. Make sure you don't have any noise or compression issues. And if you do, just downsize a little bit before you submit. And that's it. A lot of these photos, guys, I think you can probably just downsize and resubmit. And just make sure that when you're looking at your images before you submit them to an agency, the #1 thing you need to do is look at them at 100%. So make sure that you're doing that and that you catch all these little issues before you submit. It's going to save you a lot of time in the long run.